Oh, Sargon, I used to have so much respect for you. In fact, I will admit, I used to be quite left-wing back in the day when I first started watching your videos, and I was still going to high school. Borderline socialist even. But after coming across your videos, I slowly began, over the years, to slide away from socialist pseudo-philosophy. Your points about identity politics, feminism, and how most progressive politics is actually being pushed by the establishment itself, it all rings so true. And I found that out because of you. Poet didn't know it. Then, one average afternoon in 2014, I ripped off my hammer and sickle badge and regained my common sense. And common sense led me to the right. For that, Sargon, I have to thank you. Thank you for converting me before I became fully corrupted by its ridiculous nature. And I do believe you are quite a nice person in real life. But now comes the painful truth. I have watched and wanted to tell you in video form for so long, your liberalist movement is absolutely stupid. Firstly, the name Liberalist.
I recommend we choose a label and stick with it. If someone who promotes feminism is a feminist, and someone who promotes socialism is a socialist, and someone who promotes Islamism is an Islamist, and someone who promotes fascism is a fascist, then someone who promotes liberalism must be a liberalist.
At first, when you pitched the name, I thought it was some kind of joke. But as the months rolled on and on, I then realized that, holy crap, you were serious about the whole entire thing. And going through with adopting that monkey air and starting this whole shebang of an activist movement. An extremely ineffectual excuse for an activist movement that lacks any real focus or strategy. In other words, a complete ad hoc mess. Firstly, being the academic failure you are, being a high school dropout and all, not to mention you're an obese son of a bitch who really needs to get out more, you certainly don't fill that leader archetype that well. In fact, you are actively harming the movement, as people will begin to make assumptions based on your own poor life choices, and because, well, a leader is supposed to be representative of its people first and foremost, and it shows that you aren't leading by example. You're leading from behind.
Are you sure this will work? I have no idea!
What I'm seeing from this movement is, for example, just from first impressions alone, is a bunch of lazy, autistic neckbeards pretending to be edgy revolutionaries, and contrarian, and waving their Kekistani flags around because they're frustrated over the fact you couldn't get laid. That's failure number one of the liberalist movement. Bad PR. Failure number two is the lack of actual political campaigning. From the looks of it, Sargon, you have a substantial power base, having around a whopping 800,000 people following you on YouTube alone. Something that took years and work and determination, I bet. But I can see this general reluctance to utilize or mobilize your power base in any meaningful way beyond just going to attend your speeches, and then your speeches only being a small part of any real activist movement. Sure, they're good for raising awareness, but even if you're just biding your time, still get plan ahead for the future, for when your movement reaches critical mass. Since the UK still has open and fair elections, at least I think, despite the fact it's turning into police pretty fast, it's recommended that's the system's weakest point. Exploit. What better way to enact change than as an elected minister of parliament? But if you don't feel comfortable running for office yourself, you could easily pick one among your ranks who is equally qualified, who would be willing to fill that role of political candidate. If you want my personal recommendation, Paul Joseph Watson would. But alas, you're not playing ahead, and that's really causing a lack of cohesion and direction, as people in your own movement are beginning to ask, okay, so we held a rally at a speaker square, where do we go from here? Did this accomplish anything? Because if this is supposed to be a resistance movement, where's the agitation? Where the hell is the civil disobedience? How is speaking at a government-approved free speech zone going to draw attention to the lack of free speech in the UK if you are still willing to toe their line, even though you're on the record time and time again of being against the ghettoization of free speech? It just shows the public you are a hypocrite and a coward with no real conviction, and that no one should take you seriously. Well, I agree with you on a lot of things, including the fact that anti-free speech, hate speech laws, and this mass surveillance bullshit, and collectivism in general have no place in a modern Western democracy. You seem to have a lot of trouble with getting reasonable people of the opposing party to sympathize with you, because you're thinking everyone against you is an SJW, and that is what is creating a straw man that contributes to this vicious, unending cycle of one side feeding the other, and vice versa. Oh, guess what? That's been happening for 10 plus years now, and we're more politically polarized than ever on both sides of the pond. Both sides. You may have read Thomas Hobbes, Rousseau, Karl Marx, Webb Du Bois, and many other books in an attempt to educate yourself to be a pretend professor. But tell me this, Sargon. Have you ever read The Art of War? Because in essence, it shows you why you're going about things all wrong. And it should have been the first thing on your list of books to read if you ever planned on reading anything. For example, I quote, "So it is said that if you know your enemies and know yourself, you will not be put at risk even in 100 battles. If you know only yourself, but not your opponent, you may win or lose. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you will always know yourself." Sun Tzu. This rings no more true than now. The first step towards defeating your opponent is to actually get to know them, to understand their mentality, their own goals, and why they believe in what they believe. Only then will you know how to formulate strategies that strike at the heart of this toxic social justice movement. Misaimed compassion and emotion. So, do you really know your enemy, Sargon? Or are you just guessing out your ass? Second, while you may have many pragmatic arguments for absolute free expression and free speech, they all fall on deaf ears on the people who should be hearing it most, because you're not giving them a compelling emotional or ethical argument for it. Because I don't think you realize how selfish you sound when most of your argument boils down to people have the right to be assholes online because multiculturalism is bad. So you don't exactly know yourself either, and how shallow your arguments really are. So it's safe to say you're going to fail miserably unless you learn to take criticism, get off your high freaking horse, and are willing to accept help from foreign advisors such as myself. Well, this was the first long-form essay-style video I've ever done. I'll be catching my breath, and I think I made a couple mistakes. To all those watching this video of Sargon, while I wouldn't consider him a complete hack, still, I think he is woefully inexperienced when it comes to political organizing and how politics actually works. If he doesn't learn anything from this video, then maybe perhaps everyone's first impressions of him were correct all along, and he really is all bark and no bite. In the meantime, know your enemy, know yourself, and God and country, my fellow freedom fighters.
Rocking all the time at the fade and though I am punk and Republican. Whoa, it's like I'm being and I love me. Whoa, I'm like, whoa, I'm black. Whoa, it's like I'm being and I love me. Whoa, I'm punk and Republican.